I want to talk a little bit about ChatGPT, GPT-5, and what it means. Now, there's what the makers of it, OpenAI, Sam Altman, say it means, and then there's what I think it means. So, what they say it means is that it is a new model. If you haven't been paying attention, and God bless you if you don't have to be tracking this stuff like I do, GPT-5 is the newest flavor of OpenAI's ChatGPT, right? And in the past, if you were using it and you had a task to do, coding versus making an image versus writing poetry, you might choose a different piece of software that they make. GPT-3, GPT-4, Codex, these various programs, Sora, these various things that they've created. Now, GPT-5 is supposed to wipe all that away and be the kind of all-in-one version. And one of the things that makes it distinctive in theory is that it is a reasoning model. So this allows it in theory to choose the best way to accomplish a task. Rather than going at it the same way it goes after all other tasks, it might itself turn to the Codex idea model or the Sora architecture and answer your question that way. It also lends itself to going out into the world and doing stuff. You can give it in future, OpenAI says, access to things like your calendar or your email such that it can do things on your behalf. Email for restaurant reservations all the way through to, determine who of your employees is showing up latest, that kind of creepy stuff. So there's sort of this, the new thing that they're also excited about is that it is both a reasoning model, you'll hear that term a lot, and agentic. I don't know why they have to make an adjective out of the word agent, but that's what they're doing. So a model that can go out and do things for you. So that's what they're excited about. Here's, though, what I think is more interesting. This is what it means, I think, in the larger sense. So first of all, a huge amount of the marketing around this thing in this announcement today had to do with how much you should let it into your life. So I mentioned, right, that it can collaborate inside your, it can connect to your Gmail or connect to your Google Calendar or your Exchange file, Exchange email protocols, all that stuff. Well, that is signaling that you should let it into your life. And really smart people, have been pointing out for a long time. Meredith Whittaker, who is the president of Signal, has been warning for a long time that this agentic idea is going to require that we really give a huge amount of access to these companies when it comes to our personal data. If you need it to, email somebody to deliver flowers to somebody, then you need to give it permission to look at your contacts, get your credit card number, and look at your email. And they're trying to normalize that. They're trying to make that seem like a normal thing. And maybe it is, maybe it should be, right? Who knows? Like, I'm not sure I have an opinion on that anymore. So also though, in the presentation, this was the crazy part to me, is they brought out a couple, the wife of which was currently undergoing cancer treatment. She has from what little I could gather from it, a really bad cancer diagnosis. And she's up there describing how ChatGPT helped her decode the options in front of her and give her greater context for what her doctors had said. Now, there's a whole indictment of the medical system that is carried inside that. The fact that we need this kind of thing because, as she pointed out, you can't get enough information out of a 30-minute consultation. That's a nightmare. But also on top of that is the idea that you're sort of spending time, like at one point, Sam Altman is sitting there thoughtfully listening to her talk about her cancer diagnosis. And then he asks her this scripted question, well, what did GPT do for you in that moment? And I just think to myself, man, if we're trotting out cancer patients to sell software doesn't feel right to me. But this is the sort of the thing is like, we're going to again and again see the funding for, the things that we've relied on in the past, customer service all the way through to maybe oncology, fall away as the temptation becomes greater to just hand over decision-making to these systems. I wrote a whole book about this, The Loop, if you want to read it. And that process is going to make the alternative to AI worse and make AI seem more and more sort of inevitable. And that's how that felt to me. But the last big thing I just want to point out is, aside from all the normalization, right? They spent some time on your calendar, they spent some time on cancer, but they spent the majority of the time showing you how good this thing is at coding. because that's really where it's going to make its money, right? It's going to make its money by replacing coders. Vibe coding is now the law of the land, and we're going to be, having people with no technical skills. I'm one of those people, able to bang out web apps and web pages endlessly, and the reason that they're so excited about that and they're making the money off of it is because of the incredible amounts of money that has been spent building this stuff. So OpenAI alone is expected to raise about $40 billion this year. They're only anticipated to make about 20 billion, right? So it's going to be a money loser one way or the other. And then on top of that, sorry, here comes my YouTube ads in the background. Sorry about that. On top of that, you've got the incredible capital expenditures that have gone with this stuff. So when you are going to build a model, you have to have these incredible amounts of data centers and processing and all these chips. You got to blow huge money on that. How huge? There's a new reporter on the AI beat named Ian Kreitsberg, I think is his name, writing for Puck, doing a great job, and he pointed out that GDP for 2025, the 3% growth that we saw in GDP, more than half of that was spending on AI. It outstripped the amount of money that you and I spent on stuff. Consumer spending was outstripped by the capital expenditures that these 4 companies, I think it's just the 4, made investing in chips and compute and data centers. And so, the estimate is that by the end of 2028, we're going to see $3 trillion spent on that stuff. So these companies are asking investors to pony up that money and to expect that down the road, it'll pay off. And the difficulty with that, of course, as Kreisberg points out, which is a really good point, he talks to people who point this out, is that when all of the banking activity is centralized in one industry like that, that's when things have gone really wrong in the past. And at some point, there's going to be some kind of market correction where the huge valuations of these companies are going to get corrected. And at that point, it could be that, right, the cost of all of this stuff craters because they just flood the market, basically. And the cost of doing the processing craters such that it becomes incredibly cheap to replace everybody in their jobs. And so to me, there's this feeling of, this has always been a faith-based industry. Pay us now for what's coming next. Give us your information, your privacy now for what's coming next. It's going to be worth it. And this was an effort to try to show, look how worth it it's going to be. And some of that had to do with cancer. Some of that had to do with your calendar, but most of that had to do with replacing coders. And to me, that sort of the money pressure on this industry, I think, is going to shape it in these really fundamental ways that are going to, I think, turn up the cadence of the need to show off just how economically disruptive these systems can be. And I'm not saying that's good or that's bad, but I think it's going to be a real cause for huge upheaval. No one's going to hold back on trying to create as much disruption with this technology as they possibly can in the desperate effort to make this money back.